The basement of the World Trade Center looked like a tomb today as investigators searched for clues. As of tonight, the U.S. is actively involved in the war in Bosnia-Herzegovina. We will have details on Phase 1. Fresh from his trip to Asia, San Francisco's mayor today found himself practicing much-needed damage control. And the end of the drought is bringing change to the Bay Area landscape. Those stories and all the news on this Saturday evening, February the 27th, 1993.
Live from KTVU, this is the Emmy Award-winning 10 o'clock news on Channel 2, the #1 primetime newscast in the country.
Good evening, I'm Leslie Griffith. In New York City tonight, 2 people are unaccounted for, officially missing following yesterday's massive explosion at the World Trade Center, the most massive of its kind in U.S. history. The death toll now stands at 5 people, with more than 1,000 injured, most from smoke inhalation. Meanwhile, investigators today moved ever closer to saying the explosion was indeed caused by a bomb. But they still do not know who may be responsible. 19 different people and groups called to claim responsibility after the explosion. New York Mayor David Dinkins arrived at the site today from Japan. He commented on the success of rescue efforts and on the relatively low fatality rate.
I suppose the thing that's most amazing is that more people weren't killed, especially having occurred at the hour that it did and in the place that it did.
The low fatality rate becomes even more remarkable after seeing this footage taken inside the destroyed underground area today. The explosion tore through the walls and heavily reinforced ceilings of a parking garage and a police command center. A police officer narrated what the camera crew was seeing.
They still don't know where this door came from. There's no doorway nearby for it to have come from. It just flew from wherever.
Nobody goes past the red line, okay? We have the clearance. This is the command center for police. This is our break room here. The whole room has been lifted off its base. We had an officer in here who was buried in the rubble, and he managed to get out through here and save his lieutenant, who was buried in the office back here.
For all of the damage, engineers say the World Trade Center is still structurally sound. It will reportedly remain closed through Monday, and there's no word on when it will reopen. President Clinton today offered words of consolation for New Yorkers and pledged the federal government's help in the investigation. In his radio address today, Mr. Clinton said, quote, "Americans should know that we'll do everything in our power to keep them safe in their streets, their offices, and their homes." As for the investigation into the cause of the explosion, all evidence points to a car bomb. Diane Dwyer is in our newsroom, and she has the latest for us. Diane.
Leslie, New York's police commissioner says traces of nitrate have been found in the basement rubble of the World Trade Center. And because of the massive amounts of damage underneath the Twin Towers, it could take days before investigators can thoroughly go over the scene. Still, they say the discovery of the nitrate, coupled with the amount of heat and damage generated by the blast, all add up to only one thing. They say it had to be a bomb.
Looks like a bomb. It smells like a bomb. It's probably a bomb.
Investigators say they will be looking for 2 very important pieces of information when they start searching through the rubble. They will look for pieces of the detonator to trace back where it was made. And according to a former U.S. intelligence officer now living in Marin County, they will also be looking for specific information to trace back where the plastique explosives came from.
If the explosives are domestic, then there are certain tags that are put in those explosives, and they can be identified because they always leave a footprint at the site of the explosion. We would assume that it came from outside the United States if it did not have a tag attached to it.
That information will help answer the question of who planted the explosives, causing yesterday's chaos and fear in New York's landmark buildings. Tomorrow's New York Times is reporting that investigators are taking one of the 19 calls claiming responsibility more seriously than the others. That caller cited strife in the former Yugoslavia. Plus, FBI Director William Sessions today acknowledged that the explosion may be connected to the fighting in the Balkans. He noted that groups involved in that war are meeting in New York. No matter who is to blame, officials say it's important for people not to give in to the fear of terrorism.
Fear is another weapon that's used against you. And that's what terrorists are all about, if these were terrorists. And what they're trying to do is deny you normalcy.
Still, officials say it was inevitable that terrorism made its way into the United States, and no surprise that a prominent building such as the World Trade Center would be picked as a target. Former intelligence officer Alan Buckaloo says the explosion has the markings of a very sophisticated terrorist group.
It took place in the second parking level between the two towers, which was a perfect place to put it. If you're going to do a lot of damage, what you want to do is try to get the superstructure so that those buildings start collapsing inward or collapse outward.
Now, one expert says the timing of the blast just a month after President Clinton's inauguration may indicate a test of sorts for the new president. Others say the World Trade Center is a logical target since the parking garage there is not secured and a car parked with explosives could be left there unnoticed. Leslie?
Okay, Diane, thank you. The same day some people pointed to Yugoslav terrorists as suspects in that bombing, the United States increased its involvement in the Yugoslavian conflict. 2 U.S. cargo planes took off from Rhein-Main Air Base. They flew over eastern Bosnia and they dropped 1 million leaflets saying that help was coming. The leaflets asked people not to fire on the planes. The U.S. is expected to wait at least 48 hours before returning to drop emergency supplies of food and medicine. Residents of eastern Bosnia, part of former Yugoslavia, have been cut off from supplies for months. Some people are said to be reduced to living in caves and foraging for nuts for food. After dropping the leaflets, the U.S. planes returned safely to base.